and welcome to the Essential Property Podcast with your hosts, Paul Samuda and Amanda Woodward. With 45 years of combined experience in the world of property buying, selling, investing and developing, they are here to share with you their knowledge in the Stoke-on-Trent, Newcastle-under-Lyme and Crewe property market. Let's get started.
Welcome to episode 5 of the Essential Property Podcast, where we discuss all things property related within the Crewe, Stoke-on-Trent and Newcastle-under-Lyme area of the country. The podcast is directed at landlords, investors, agents, or anyone new to the area and thinking of investing in residential or commercial real estate. My name is Paul Samuda, and I'm pleased to have with me today Mr. Andrew McGarrigle, former estate agent and letting agent until about 3 years ago, when he sold up to live a slightly less frenetic life. Andrew, welcome. For those that don't know you, perhaps you can give a little bit of a brief introduction to your background, how you became an estate agent before we dive into the nitty-gritty of Crewe property.
Well, hi, Paul. Thanks for having me along. Well, very simply, I became an estate agent because my father was one, and I was born and brought up in the Crewe area. Well, actually, Biddulph, Stoke-on-Trent, but my father was a professional footballer for Crewe Alex, so he eventually became an estate agent in Crewe. I obviously grew up in Crewe and lived in Crewe virtually all my life. And when I left university, I wanted to be anything but an estate agent, but jobs were tough in 1983 to get. So I went crawling cap in hand, and my dad gave me a job. He was actually a commercial chartered surveyor, as is my brother, and I entered the residential side, ran various offices for his firm for a number of years until he sold out to the Halifax in 1988. I stayed with the Halifax and worked my way up to become area manager for Cheshire and Staffordshire until 1998, when I left to start my own business. I had my own business from 1998 until 2018, so just about 20 years. And we made a pretty good job of it. We had other offices in Alsager and Sandbach, although I closed those at the start of the recession in 2007. But we had quite a good standing in Crewe, and I always saw myself as a big fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a big pond, if you take the drift.
Yeah.
But we had some good things. I think the peak we ever sold in 1 month was 90 houses. So we had some very good months prior to the recession in 2007. Things were a bit tougher after that. And then I took the decision when I got to 55 to take a good offer from Stevenson Brown estate agents to sell out and look after my own property portfolio, which is a mixture of residential and commercial properties, which I look after. So still have to deal with tenants, which is the bad news. But,
Amazing.
But after 37 years in the business, I think I can smell a good one and smell a bad one. And obviously problems don't faze me, if you like. So plenty of experience.
I think you're a little bit modest in terms of the heights of the business. I know I bought my first property in Crewe through McGarrigle, and I had to deal with the lovely girl who was quite a toughie. I mean, you trained them well. But correct me if I'm wrong, you were the largest independent estate agent in terms of sales in Crewe.
I think we were at times. I think Butters would probably give you an argument that they were. I think they had spells where they probably were, but obviously they sold out some years ago to a bigger company. So as an independent, we probably were for a long time. But obviously Butters had 17 offices, I think, or something.
Yeah.
So they had bigger marketing, etc., etc. But I always went on the philosophy of trying to get houses on the market at the right price and try and sell them, as opposed to just having a big stock. My dad always used to say, it's all about the ones you sell, not the ones you list. So I think we were always known to be fairly realistic in terms of pricing, and I think that's probably the difference between us and them. But we always had a good stock. We had a good relationship with Butters. I wouldn't like to knock them, but I think they changed more than we did in the time. So.
Yeah. And just in terms of the sale of the business, you said you got to 55. Was it always your goal to get to 55 and call it a day and do other things, or was it market driven? Did you think I've had enough of this?
To be perfectly honest, Paul, I would have retired at 45 if I had something like a business. But I'm not a natural person who wants to sit and make money year after year. I mean, I have a good living now, thankfully, off the back of my properties. But to me, getting away from the stress, it's very, very stressful running a busy estate agent. And the biggest driver for me was just how people started being, in terms of when I first started, even as a 21-year-old, people showed me a lot more respect as a 21-year-old than they did as a 54-year-old. And obviously everybody's an internet expert now. And it just became to the stage where I was getting emails on Saturday nights from people who'd had a drink, trying to demand why I hadn't sold their house, and things. So, in fact, I would say the 3 worst clients I had, both vendors and purchasers, all came in the last 12 months of my business. So it was an easy decision to move away from that, to be honest. So,
and I suppose that's the part of estate agent businesses that, both as an investor or even as a consumer, we don't see. We think it's all glossy pictures, bit of viewing, sell a house, take a fee, and that's it. But there's obviously a lot more to it behind the scenes.
Well, there is, and sadly, not everybody's as nice a customer as you ever were, Paul, or Amanda, your colleague.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I worked hard in my business for a long time, as you know, and I consider myself to know what I'm doing. And I just think when you get somebody who's selling their first house who rings you up and gives you a list of 10 things they think you ought to be doing, having no experience whatsoever in selling a house, you think it's time to hang up your boots.
No, indeed. So, as I said, I bought my first property on Middlewich Street. I think it was 178 Middlewich Street, I think, from memory. That was back in 2012, so almost 10 years ago. I remember I started investing in Stoke, and then I graduated to Crewe, and there was a stark difference between Crewe and Stoke. And people in Crewe told me, please don't compare us to Stoke, which was quite interesting. But in those 10 years, obviously, you've been, from an estate agent standpoint, out of the game for about 3 years, but obviously you're an investor and a landlord yourself. But in the last 10 years or so, what do you think has changed?
Well, I think, obviously, there's been a big structural change in the economy in Crewe. There's a lot of talk about the impact HS2 is going to have. Obviously, Bentley's entrenched itself more deeply in the town, and that's a big driver, I think, because if Bentley came out of Crewe for any reason, the town would be a mess. There's a lot of people working there, and they keep talking. I think if Brexit hadn't have happened, they'd have been doubling their workforce here, which would be good for the town. Obviously, I come from the background where the railway and Bentley fed the town, and obviously the railway's more or less gone as an employer now. But thankfully, Bentley's stepped up to the plate, and they keep talking about investing in the town centre. My brother is a retail expert, a retail expert rather than, because he's in the commercial world. And he actually lectures at, I think, Trent Poly, which is a centre for that. And he pulls his hair out at some of the things they're doing. But I think they'll get there, but by the wrong routes. And I think if the centre was more vibrant, I think that it would be an easier sell, if you like, in terms of a lifestyle town. But I spoke to a young lady last night. I went out for a drink, and she's moved up here. Her boyfriend works for an IT company, and they specifically moved to Crewe because property still remains very affordable.
Yeah,
they came up here without jobs in the area. He works from home. She's got a job in the local pub. She actually, is a barmaid in the pub, and they love it. They said they're in some of those new houses off West Street where the old railway works used to be.
Yeah.
I think the affordability still remains high. And it isn't. I was born and brought up in Crewe, and it's a lovely town. I just think they need to get the town centre sorted. That's the biggest thing for me.
Just on that town centre, I've heard a number of different stories and schemes, and I actually promote it sometimes that Crewe's trying to turn itself into a mini Las Vegas with HS2 on the way. Revamped town centre. But what is their objective? In terms of your experience and your communication with people from the council and different entities, what is the plan that they want to do with the centre?
Well, they've obviously done the market hall now, which, if you look at Altrincham markets, and some of your listeners, I suppose, will be familiar with Altrincham markets, and that is deemed to have regenerated the centre of Altrincham.
Right.
So they did the market. I don't know if you've ever been there yourself, Paul, but basically they took an old market hall and they've made a series of independent food retailers around the outside of the market hall, probably 15 or so, or drinks and food, with common tables in the middle. So you get your food or drink and sit down in the middle. It's a remarkably good atmosphere. And what's happened then is other businesses have latched onto it and opened up in the adjoining shops and streets and so on, and it's all brought people in. So they've ended up with a very vibrant, town centre in Altrincham.
Yeah.
It's probably a little bit more upmarket than Crewe.
Yeah.
generally the thing works. So they've done the same in Crewe now. And I believe they've got 5 or 6 food retailers ready to go in. They probably need to open with more than that, but they're going to hold concerts there. They're going to sort of have these food retails and drinks outlets in their craft beer and so on. And I think that will draw people into the town centre at night, because the problem with Crewe has always been that nobody lives in the town centre. So it becomes a bit of a desert at night. So I think if you've got more people going in there, obviously other shops will stay open in the evenings, other businesses will open, other pubs will open and so on. And I think one leads to the other. I mean, you only have to look at Nantwich and how vibrant that is. And that's driven by leisure facilities. That's the new future, because obviously retail's struggling, if you like. So the building, the layout of the town centre is nice. They've now knocked down the bus station and all that side of the town centre. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
The clock tower was. That's now all gone. And they're talking about building some new shops on there. And I think that's where the divergence comes between my brother and the planners, because I think he feels they're building the wrong things there. He doesn't think it'll ever get built because they've employed a contractor to do it, who obviously won't start till they get retailers signed up. I personally think they should build houses on there to draw more people into town centre, and because there's enough shopping within an hour of Crewe. Birmingham, Chester, Manchester, Liverpool, even the Potteries, the Pottery Centre, where Crewe just won't survive as a thriving big shopping centre. And the retails, as you probably have noticed through pandemic, has really taken a massive hit. So they've got to change the model, and the model should be leisure, smaller shops, shops run by people to make a living rather than a fortune. And in fact, my brother's just been given the job of filling the empty Asda shops, which are empty. So he's just been given the job to do that. So, he'll attract people into those. And it starts off with the small shops, and then the big shops will suddenly want to come back in, you see, when it's all busy. So I think the model will be a lot more going on in the town centre, which means people want to stay in Crewe rather than spend the money in Nantwich or Knutsford or Chester or Manchester or somewhere. And then the town just becomes a nicer town, because the outskirts of the town are beautiful. The estates there, the park, the Queen's Park it was the second formal park laid out in the north of England after Birkenhead Park, and I think it's probably the best urban park in the north of England at all.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to go and have a look at, how nice that is, that's the kind of thing that Crewe can hang its hat on, So I think there's a lot going to be going on. It's just a shame the council's doing it rather than something independent.
You mentioned about sticking more residential in the centre, and there's a big debate waging throughout the country, primarily on the back of planning changes put forward by the Housing Minister. Are you a fan of seeing more residential right in the city centre versus trying to pack it with retail, which, as we've seen over the years, has just not worked?
Well, if you look at Crewe, Paul, you probably know it, quite well now. If you look at the whole of Nantwich Road, there's almost 2 miles of shops on Nantwich Road.
That's right.
It's a mile from, just under a mile from the old police station to the railway station. So you've got nearly 2 miles of shops. You've got almost another probably half a mile down Eddleston Road. You've got a half a mile of shops on West Street, and then you've got the town centre as well. There's not a town in this country of the size of Crewe, which I think has got a population of about 70,000, who needs that many individual shops. So obviously a lot of them on the fringes of that can be turned into the kind of properties your clients might be interested in. And obviously there's a lot of advantages, as you and they'll know, to changing commercial properties into residential, and we both know people who are doing that. So I think that's one massive opportunity to look out for, in Crewe generally, because we just don't need that many shops. And if the town centre rents come down, which is the reason why people would open a shop on West Street or Eddleston Road or Nantwich Road, because it's cheaper. Yeah. If the town centre rents come down, then obviously it's going to be more affordable to people go where they ought to be, which is the town centre. Although crazily, for a town centre that's not functioning well, there's still the dearest parking charges in Cheshire East, which I just don't understand. It's one of the things I would do would be get rid of the parking charges and draw people in. And another point my brother makes is actually to incorporate parking, on-street parking, rather than making it all pedestrianised, because people will call in to go to a butcher's or a baker's or a candlestick maker's and park outside, go in, buy their thing and come away again. But if they've got to park 5 minutes away and pay 75p, they won't do it. So they'll go to Eddleston Road or Nantwich Road, which is why Nantwich, Knutsford and these smaller towns work so well, because you can park outside the shop you want to go in.
Well, hopefully we have some people from the council that are listening to some of the very valuable points that you're making. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the famous HS2. Have we got past the stage of will it or won't it happen? Are we past that stage now?
I think so. I think they've made the decision they're going to do it, and the final cost will be far more than they've ever anticipated. As somebody said to me, if you want to save, if it's that important you to save to be at a meeting, in an hour rather than an hour and a half, just leave half an hour earlier. Take the journey. But the way work's going, and I think the pandemic's taught us all that even what we're doing now, we wouldn't have done 2 years ago. We wouldn't have done a Zoom meeting 2 years ago, but it's become the norm for people now. So I don't know how many people are going to be dashing to London every day. Apparently, talking to local contacts who are on the railway, the important thing isn't the fact that how busy HS2 gets, but it's what it releases for the commercial, the other lines to let commercial traffic.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, that's what's at the zenith of it. But I mean, you have to say, if it brings 1% extra prosperity to Crewe, then you've got to welcome it, because anything extra is going to be good. I mean, it'll have a bigger effect than that for Crewe. How wide that'll flow out from Crewe, I mean, one of my neighbours is building some houses in Winsford, which is about 10 or 12 miles away, and he's had those valued up because of the HS2 effect. Now, I just don't think Winsford, for example, is going to have an effect from HS2, to be honest. But I think Crewe, particularly the villages that are close to where the station's going to be, which is in the station now, apparently, going to have quite a boost in terms of popularity. And anywhere that's walkable to it will have as well, because you're buying a flat in Crewe, or renting a place in Crewe for a fraction of what you'd be doing it in London. So, an hour on the train, people travel for that in London, don't they? Easily.
Well, to that point, my first visit to Crewe was when I lived in London. I remember sitting in, I can't remember which agent it was. It might well have been yours, actually. And I just got some quotes to rent my 1-bedroom flat in London. And that was exactly the same price as a 5-bedroom house with a surrounding lake in an area just outside of Crewe. And I mean, I was shocked. One can only imagine that when HS2 does actually happen in the distant future, then it will open up property to a whole bunch of people that don't mind traveling on the train for an hour. I mean, you can do that from East London to West London on the tube. Yeah. And it can take a lot longer. It's going to be quite interesting. Just on that point, I mean, sort of you being in the estate industry for a long time, so you've seen recessions, you've seen government policy changes. What do you make of the market booming during COVID?
Well, I think as an economist, which is what my degree's in, it's basically a voucher, and a voucher will always give a bump to something because it's increasing the demand for it. Basically it's a £15,000 saving or so, or up to a £15,000 saving. It's a massive amount of money for most people, particularly in Crewe. And from what I'm hearing from my old firm and from other estate agents I know, they can't get houses on the market quick enough. They're literally going the day they're coming on. And, that's great because it clears out a lot of the stock. It refreshes everything. It'll slow down after June. I mean, it'll start slowing down a little bit very soon because obviously if you talk to the solicitors, I mean, I talked to Jonathan Manning, one of the local solicitors, about Christmas time. I had something I had to ask him about one of my own properties, and he's literally working 12-hour days, to try and get the properties through. And then they extended it, and he could just go, oh, thank God for that. But that's obviously we're halfway through April now. If you haven't bought a house now, you're probably not going to get the stamp duty saving given the volume. I mean, Stevenson Brown apparently sold 68 houses in February. So that's a massive amount. It's not quite up to the 90 we sold at our peak, but it's quite good for them.
Well, it's not the same management, is it?
No, it's not. Although it's all the same staff, I would add, so you can guarantee the staff are very good. Because I trained
absolutely.
But it's a lot of houses, it's a hell of a lot, and they're running around, very briskly because obviously they've had half the staff furloughed in that time. But
sure.
But I think the boom will stop. There'll be a little bit of a run on. It's like trying to stop a speeding train. It takes a few hundred yards to stop it. But, because there's still an over demand for the supply that's there. But slowly but surely that'll tilt back again, and they'll start listing more than they're selling, and then suddenly they'll build up a stock again and have a bit of a rest in the process. And that will probably happen, I think, sometime around December next year, which naturally is a break on the market every year. December is always a slowdown.
And for investors, either current or new ones coming into the area, how does this impact them? Or should they be now looking at slightly different parts of Crewe to invest their hard-earned pennies? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I've always been, and I've probably had this conversation with you in the past, Paul, is always buy the best house in the best street you can afford. Even if it's a bit dear, the best streets will always stay dear. If you start compromising and going to a poorer street, I think you can risk that, I don't think property prices are going to go down massively. They've always talked about it, but I've never known up here. It's not like London where you could, they can suddenly drop by 10% or something. Yeah. We don't go up as much, but we don't go down as much either. So I think if you buy a good house in a good street, you'll always be able to sell it. I mean, I've had some now for probably 15 years, and I don't think they've ever gone down. They just haven't gone up as much as I'd have liked them to. Yeah. But I think, I've always concentrated off the Nantwich Road area personally. We own shops on Nantwich Road and I own houses off it. The Hungford Road area is very good. Anywhere on the peripheral's good. I think I would just still tend to stay out of the West End a little bit, although there's good roads and bad roads there as well, So, but I wouldn't just buy on price. I think I'd buy on value rather than price. I think that's always been my driver. The roads, like your Ruskin roads and Luntown, which you'll know well, they're always nice roads. There's a reason they're nice roads, and there's a reason they stay nice. So I think that's where I would look at. But I think you've got to look for those other opportunities. If people can do it, finding the commercial properties to turn into residential, and I think that's a big market because they tend to come cheaper. Commercial property values have actually dropped quite a lot. You look at something sort of sell commercially if you can get the change of use for it, and I think they've changed the rules a little bit, so it's not as hard as it was. So
permitted development now.
Yeah, that's right. So I think if you can find those kind of places, because rents have dropped during the pandemic and commercial property isn't as viable, I think that there's some huge opportunities in that side because I don't think people have latched onto it. You've just obviously got to have a bit more cash to do the conversions and things, which, is all about liquidity, I suppose. But I certainly think I think if we were doing more stuff, we'd be looking at doing more conversions because obviously the VAT savings and the other advantages of it. So, there are still, quite a few. And I know some, I know, as you know, and I know a few other people who've done that and that's their model almost now, to do the conversions, if you like. So, and you can split it if you have a shop downstairs and flats above. We've managed to split it in the past to get the VAT savings and so on. But I think there's tons. I think there's tons of that available, and it just doesn't hold a commercial value because the rents are so low. If you've got something that's rented at £6,000 and you're only going to get relatively low covenant model, people going in there, you can only value a terraced house that's a shop effectively. You can only value that at probably 8 to 10 times its rent. So that's cheaper than it'd be as a terrace, if you like.
That's right.
So I think that's what you've got to look at. And the good thing is I don't think many of the agents in Crewe have got a lot of experience in valuing commercial properties. So I think and commercial agents are always harder. So I think you might find a few slip through the gap, if you like. So definitely worth a look at.
What about some of the neighbouring villages? Wisterton, Nantwich, you've already mentioned, Shavington, Haslington. Did you used to sell much property there? Are there good investment opportunities there, whether flips or just buy-to-lets?
Yeah, well, buy-to-lets are always going to be good because the schools are all good in those. So Haslington, Shavington, Wisterton, Williston, we sell houses in. I didn't tend to go to Nantwich, but the ones that are separate from Crewe, the schools are very good. Although I think some of the schools in Crewe are very good. I wouldn't like to knock those either, but I think those are very nice places to live. They're nice villages. They've got good facilities, and the thing is that just because somebody wants to live in Shavington doesn't mean they're more able to buy a house than they are if they live in Crewe. There's still problems with people getting on the housing ladder. So I know I live in Williston myself, which is towards Nantwich, and I know there's quite a few rented properties here, and I know a lot of people who would live here to rent if there were more. So, and obviously you get much higher rents as well. So, obviously you've got to do the risk reward thing. You might not be getting up to 8 or 9%, but I think you'll get better tenants, and you're not getting that marginal tenant who might be on benefits or struggling with their money every month. You're going to get somebody who perhaps is earning a bit more. They just might be, I don't know, a divorcee who kids go to the school or something. So they might be a good risk, but it's a good steady return for them, isn't it? For you, sorry, it's it's a good tenant, and they stay. I mean,
Yes.
the biggest problem is tenants leaving, because every time you've got to spend some money. If they leave after 6 months and they've made a mess, you've got to redecorate or change carpets and so on. So if somebody stays for 10 years, it's a dream, because you probably don't have to do as much repairs, which you've got to factor into the whole thing. Because I've had a couple of mine come empty, and you go and you think, oh God, you've only been here 6 months and I've got to buy a new carpet.
No, indeed.
Yeah, so there's opportunities there, and I think there is some commercial properties in those villages which may prove attractive as well. For that side of things, that the corner shop doesn't work particularly, and I seem to be opening these co-ops and NICEs and things like that that swallow up all the trade in the village, and I think those are the things to look out for as well.
Okay, brilliant. And let's just go back. We touched on Bentley. I'm always amazed that sort of Bentley, as huge as they are and as dominant they are in the luxury vehicle market, they almost are a little bit undercover in Crewe. Many people I've spoken to out of the area don't realise that Bentley's made in Crewe, which I find amazing. Any thoughts in terms of their future investment and the effects that's going to have on properties or HMOs / buy-to-lets, people moving into the area and around?
Well, the things I've heard, and it's probably not as current as it would have been if you were talking to me 3 years ago, because obviously it kept me here a lot closer to the ground. But the things I'm hearing is that the factory is staying. They're expanding it. They've shut off Sunnybank Road now, and also Pims Lane. So they've effectively created a campus there now. So the council said, yeah, you're staying, you can have what you want. So they've now got what they've got at Wolfsburg, which is a campus, which is, you can't drive through the centre of it anymore. So, and they've bought up more land, and they're definitely expanding. I think last time I heard the numbers, it was they employed something like 3,500 people, and I heard they were expanding to 6,500, and I think that would have happened without Brexit. One of the downsides, but it actually could be an upside for you and your clients, is that quite a lot of people are on contracts there. They're contracted rather than employed. I think Furcroft and another company are the people who bring them in. And I think that contracted nature means that people will have to rent up here, which is obviously the house shares and so on. So I think that's going to last longer than we probably anticipated, although I think that's the model they use. And I think in the motor industry, from what I gather, people are brought in to do a specific project for a year, like design a seatbelt or design a steering wheel. They're brought in to do that project for a year. So they work at Bentley now, and then they'll go to Jaguar, and then they'll go to Audi or something, and they'll float around, and sort of work for different companies. So I'm hearing that's something that happens. And certainly I sold houses for people who bought houses to be here for 2 or 3 years on a specific contract and knew they were going to be moving. So I think that model stays. One of the downsides for the people on the better money, the better engineers, is they're not going to live in Crewe. They're going to go and live in Nantwich or Knutsford, because obviously if people are used to travelling for 20 minutes or half an hour, you can drive to some very nice places out of Crewe in 20 minutes or half an hour. So I think the contractors is where, and I think a lot of those contractors, if I was going to move to this area, going back to your thing about the villages, I think I would rather live, if I was on that kind of engineer's salary and I'm used to living in, quite a nice place, to travel 3 miles into Crewe from Nantwich is a dream for a lot of people, because it's down one road with, the only place you can go down that road is Bentley or the hospital. So it's quite easy. So I think that those kind of people, will rent, and they'll pay good rents because they're used to renting elsewhere. They'll probably even get some assistance with it. So I think that's a market worth looking at. But I think you get a lot of what they call the blue collar workers who are on contracts will rent the rooms and the small houses in Crewe. And once again, if I was doing that, I'd either want to walk to work if I was that close. So, that area of Coppenall with the newer houses might be a good market, for people there.
Yes. Fair point.
If you can just, what you probably won't remember, Paul, being a fairly newcomer to the areas, when Crewe's very flat, there's actually no hills in it. So everybody, when I was a kid, used to go to work in the it's Rolls-Royce then, or the railway works on a bike. So when he came out, they were mistimed by about half an hour. So I think Rolls-Royce finished half an hour earlier than the works, but going down West Street was like the Tour de France. There could be, I think there was 10,000 people at the railway works, and I reckon 8,000 of them went to work on a bike and came down West Street. You just never see anything like it. It was just a it was just like the wildebeest going through the Serengeti. Yeah, it was awesome. So I think a lot of people now will go on a little bike to work if they can, or walk to work, and with the health crazes now, so closer to Bentley might be a good option for people. But it's definitely the biggest employer. But equally the retail park or the business park on the other side of town is growing all the time.
Yeah,
they keep releasing new land, and whilst they don't employ a lot of people per square foot, they're big sheds really, but AO's one of their main distribution centre, where AO.com is here, and they employ quite a lot of people, and obviously that's walkable from your Nantwich Road, even Haslington, that side, Hungerford Road side of Crewe. So, and when you go down that road ever, there's always a lot of people walking up and down, because obviously they're 24 hours a day, those places, so there's a lot of turnover of people.
Sure. And I think that's one of the attractions of Crewe for certainly the house share and the HMO investors. It's quite a transient population, people on contract. Companies are expanding in distribution, so there'll be a bunch of people that are moving to town to take advantage of that and earn some extra money. It's been very attractive from that standpoint. So going forward, in terms of now you're looking after your portfolio, are you looking to expand that? Are you looking to buy more things as they come available?
Well, I did buy one last year, but it was off. Somebody had sold a flat up downstairs. I'd converted. My last model I was using was converting terraced houses into 2 flats.
Right.
If you could buy them at the right money and they were the right size and shape, we got a good model working on it actually. Did about 5, I think. But one of the girls who worked for me decided she wanted to get on the house market, so she bought the downstairs flat, and then she ended up getting divorced and wanted to get rid of the liability. So I agreed to buy it back off her, because it would have been more problematic being in the same freehold leasehold arrangement.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But I think, to be honest, we've got enough. And in fact, if I could sell a few, I think I would. I've got one mortgage, and I could do with clearing off. If we could sell one property and get rid of that, it would actually give us more money than we're getting now, because obviously we wouldn't have the mortgage to pay.
Yes, of course.
So with it being a commercial loan, it's over short term, and it's quite a lot of money every month. So, but no. I keep seeing stuff, and my brother keeps ringing me up about commercial deals he sees, because he keeps down the market, and he thinks you can buy stuff so cheaply now that they're worth buying, as you say, flipping, just holding on to, maybe getting a good tenant in and then flipping them over. I mean, every time we've had a commercial property come empty, we get, because I put my own board up, and you sometimes have an agent on, but I always get inundated with calls from people. I go and see them, and if I like the look of them, we'll take them. And then, but for example, we did that with a firm in Uttoxeter called Bear Coffee, and our little shop they rented off us, they've grown into a 6-chain coffee house now.
Amazing.
And they've taken one in Northwich, on the quays in Northwich. They've taken 2 in Derby, and one in the big shopping centre, and one on the Iron Market. And they've taken the old bank in Stone as well. So they've grown from our little shop 5 years ago to 6 shops. So they've become a good covenant from a very poor covenant, and that's what it's all about,
Yes.
So that's what we're looking for, is to find good people. You get a bit of a turnover to start with, but we always fill them. There's always a hairdresser or somebody who wants to run a little cafe or something, and some work, some don't, but they can be very high yielding. That's the good thing.
Sure.
So that's another area to look at, really.
Okay. Before we wrap up, just any words of wisdom or caution for some of the newer investors coming into the area? I mean, we get calls all the time saying, I'm looking to do an HMO in Crewe, I'm looking to buy 2 or 3 buy-to-lets in Crewe. Any thoughts, any words of caution or wisdom from yourself?
Yes, listen is the biggest thing I'd say. If somebody says, don't buy there, listen to them, because you can make a big error. And I think get to know the town, do your research, go out and have a real good look. And if it feels right, it probably is. If it doesn't feel right, walk away. Things to look for would be bins on the street, at the front, that are left there all week. I don't think that looks good. And there are some streets that happens and some streets it doesn't. Look at the parking. Look how dense the parking is. Is it impossible to get down there? How do the houses look on the street? Are they done up? Are they renovated? It's much easier to rent or sell a property on a street that looks nice than one that's looking a bit shabby. I've got one in Lunt Avenue, and all the streets in the terrace part of Lunt Avenue look great, apart from 2, and they unfortunately one of them is right opposite my property. It's really run down. So I think have a good look, use your eyes, use your ears, use your nose. I think those are all things. But I think listen to people, find somebody you can trust. I mean, you did the right thing latching onto us in terms of using us for advice. And I know you've had other clients and customers who have come in to see me in the past, and we're always welcome to sit down and say, pull up a chair, let me give you the benefit of our wisdom, if you like. But then there's no point asking for advice and then not listening to it, in my view. So I think listen to all the advice you can get. If advice is free, take it. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to take it all, but I think listen to it, use your senses, keep your eyes on the local paper, probably see what's going on and so on. And I think Crewe can only go upwards. I mean, it's in a wonderful part of the country, and it's the cheapest part by, well, I suppose Stoke's probably on a par, but in Cheshire terms, it's right in the middle. There was 1% unemployment until fairly recently.
That's right.
Until the pandemic came, and any town that's got 1% unemployment, in economic terms, that's full employment. So if a town's got full employment, it can't be that bad. I just wish they'd get the town centre right, really. That's the big thing. I think H-Test 2 and the station will look after itself. I think the work's there. I think the houses are there. I think it just needs to be pulled together by Cheshire East doing something special in the town centre, really.
Brilliant. And are you offering any services? Can people contact you if they want a little bit of advice or are you keeping yourself to yourself these days?
No, I'm always here if somebody, you've rung me now and again about things, and so has Amanda. I'm always here to do it. I don't particularly want to earn any money because I'll just pay too much tax on it. But I'm always happy if, somebody wants a guided tour of Crewe. As you know, I can talk for England, and, that might be something I could offer is let me give people a guided tour of Crewe. This is a good place, this is a bad place. Look at the park, look at the Bentley, how does it relate to the town and so on. Don't mind doing that at all. Okay. I don't think I particularly want to get involved in buying or selling really advice. Sure. So more general advice about the town and area and so on.
Okay. Well, we'll put some email details in the show notes. So if someone wants to drop you a note, and then you can have a conversation with them if needs be.
Just remind them it's a bottle of Côte de Rhône wine for each bit of advice.
Sounds good to me. Cheaper the price.
Well, I say that to everybody, and you want to know how many bottles of wine I've got over the last 3 years? None. Not a single one. So I've given a lot of advice, but not got much wine back for some reason.
Andrew, always a pleasure. I'm glad things are going well and you're enjoying your semi-retirement, as it were. We'll certainly catch up soon, and thanks for your words of wisdom and advice and guidance with regard to Crewe. We'll talk soon. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Paul.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if so, please hit subscribe and share with those who you think would enjoy it too. To get in touch with Paul and Amanda directly, please visit their website www.essentialpropertyoptions.co.uk for more information. We look forward to sharing with you on the next episode.